A very pleasant good afternoon to all of our viewers. Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk. We are always delighted to come your way every Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time to share meaningful insights on various issues. Today is Father's Day, and I want to take the opportunity to wish all of our fathers out there a very, very happy Father's Day. Well, I said today is Father's Day. Traditionally, we would say tomorrow is Father's Day, but for the Adventist community, of course, the celebration is done in our respective congregations on, Sabbath services. But happy Father's Day. So to be an Adventist, you're doubly blessed. You get Father's Day on Saturday and you get it on Sunday. So happy Father's Day. And because the emphasis is on fathers, I've decided to devote this afternoon's Let's Talk to issues relating to men. We are going to be talking about men's health, and I have two very capable and professional individuals who will share with us in a little while. But before I introduce them, let's just bow for a word of prayer. Eternal Father and our God, we thank you for the opportunity that you have extended to us to come again to the public, sharing meaningful insights into men's health. We pray that you will grant that the information presented will prove meaningful and that individuals who listen will be able to make necessary adjustments to their lives and live a more meaningful life for you. Thank you for hearing and answering. Be with our guests. Grant that everything will go well technology-wise, and may this program prove a blessing. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so again, I want to say a pleasant good afternoon to everyone. If you are listening via Second Advent Radio, right around Antigua, Barbuda, St. Kitts, Nevis, Montserrat. If you're listening to us via one of our social platforms, YouTube, SLC Adventist or SLC Church channel, welcome just the same. This afternoon, as I indicated, we're talking about men's health, and I have two gentlemen. We have our men's ministries director in the person of Pastor Stanton Adams. Pastor Stanton Adams serves as men's ministries director. He is also the family life director. Welcome and good afternoon, Pastor Adams.
Good afternoon and pleasant good afternoon and happy Father's Day in advance to all of our fathers. And it is my delight to be here in this setting. Very important discussion this afternoon that is well needed and I guess very timely.
Okay, wonderful. I noticed, Pastor Adams, you are celebrating Marriage Encounter. That's another program that we host weekly. Pastor Adams, just in case you didn't know, is my co-host on Marriage Encounter, and he is reflecting the Marriage Encounter logo at the back. Well, we have a second guest with us this afternoon, Dr. Stephen Carryl. Dr. Carryl is the CEO of Community Hospital. That's a Seventh Adventist Health Institution in Port of Spain, Trinidad. We are delighted to have you with us this afternoon, Dr. Carryl. Welcome to Let's Talk.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Greene. It's a pleasure to be on with you and Dr. Adams, and wishing all of our listeners, the men on the program, happy Father's Day, those of us who are fathers, and having an opportunity to discuss a very important subject on men's health. I think I'm delighted to participate with you on this program.
Wonderful, wonderful. We are looking forward to a very meaningful discussion. I want to jump right into the discussion now, in fact. And I want to begin with you, Dr. Carryl. When we talk about men's health, I believe it's quite an extensive area. What are some of the more common health issues that men need to give attention to? If you had asked me that question, I would probably say things like weight management and fitness and prostate and drug use and abuse and, but I'm not a medical doctor. So I want to hear you. What are some of the more common health issues that men need to give attention to?
I think you're starting off in the right place. I think even without being a medical doctor, the fact that you're a man, that qualifies you and you have credibility to discuss men's health. And in particular, as it relates to asking the appropriate questions. I would back up a little bit though. I come a little slightly different. When I discuss men's health, I try to focus mostly on the attitude men have about health more than a specific disease. Because it doesn't matter which disease we pick, I think the way men approach their health, to me, should be the primary focus. And I'll share why I'm telling you this. The Mayo Clinic put out a study, and they run this study every year, and it's consistent. Listen to this. This is for all our men. Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic report, it's on men's health. It says 72% of the male respondents would rather do household work, like cleaning toilets, than going to the doctor.
Wow.
65% said that they avoid going to the doctor as long as possible. 20%, they say they're not always honest with their doctor about their health. And 37%, they withhold information about health-related matters. Now, like you said, this is a broad subject. There are many different conditions. But if we wanted to get to the core, the heart of the men's health concern, is mainly starting with our attitude and how we could change and get into a place where we are more willing to treat ourselves the way we treat our cars that we like. Most of us who have a nice car, we take it for a tune-up. We've had tuned it up. Some guys learn to tune up their car themselves. And we pay a certain level of attention to the car, knowing that if you do the frequent preventive maintenance, the brake pad might be bad, but not the drum. It never gets that bad because we are frequently doing things with the oil and we check the brakes. Well, there's no real difference much with our health. There is clear value and benefit with all of us frequently doing things that are mainly preventive. We're not sick. And I'm mentioning this in contradistinction that everybody knows women are more likely to go see the doctor than men. So this is, even though it's a men's lecture or a thing about men's health, it's good that the women that are on the program today really see how they could partner with their spouses to help them get to a better place as it relates to their overall health. And just as a matter of, to go to the second part, all of those conditions you mentioned, and I would add, in addition, many men deal with things like erectile dysfunction and other specific things and prostate that are just related to men that we could get into a little later, but I really want to focus my attention on the attitude more than the disease process.
No, it's amazing. If I heard you correctly, that those research findings from Cleveland Clinic, I believe you said,
yes, Cleveland
that some men would rather do household chores, cleaning the toilet and that kind of thing, than going to
yeah.
That's
76%.
Wow. Wow. I believe the ladies who are listening, those wives must be saying, my husband is not alone in this one.
Yes, yes.
Rather very interesting. It's alarming. Let me ask you though, and I'm really hoping that as the men on the program today listen, wives, if your husband is not listening, the good thing is you can always go back later on YouTube for them to review, because this is important information that your husbands, your spouses need to hear. So I had mentioned things like weight management, fitness. I see some men who carry around a very pregnant looking type belly. And a lot of men tell me that, you know, it's a struggle to control the belly fat thing there. Overweight in men, obesity, and the impact it has on health. Can you just talk a little bit about that? I know you're really concerned about the attitudes towards health, and we will discuss that in a little bit. But can you say something about the tendency of some of our men to become overweight, and how will that impact their health overall? Could you unmute, please?
You're addressing a subject that is personal to me, because my area of expertise is obesity and weight loss surgery. So this is right in line with what I do on a regular basis. One of the challenges for the male is that we have not 100%, but when men gain weight, they have what is called an android morphology. We have where when we do gain weight, it is distributed mainly in the abdominal area. But equally important, it's that you have a situation where it's not just only on the outside, it's really the fat that builds up on the inside. And Dr. Greene, that is very dangerous fat. The fat that builds up in the female, that is called more like the gynecoid, which is buttocks and thighs and hips, that fat distribution is actually safer than the one that we develop in the intra-abdominal cavity, because the fat that's in there has a lot of hormonal impact that affect our heart. And so it's a dangerous fat. That's a fat that could decrease your life expectancy. It increases things like sleep apnea, all of the diabetes and those conditions that are accompanying obesity. In the male, it is particularly troubling because we develop intra-abdominal or central truncal obesity. And every like 10 or 15 pounds of weight we gain, in particular men, if we put it on in the abdominal area, it decreases our life expectancy by a precise number of years. So it has profound impact that it could even override good genetics. If your grandparents live long and your parents live long as you start gaining weight, in particular in the trunk and central area, your life expectancy immediately drops. So it has tremendous implications in men. I'm not saying not in women, but in particular men. And I would say, before I end on it, a lot of us, what we are seeing is the impact of the stuff we're eating that is causing us to also add to that area. So even now, some women who are not necessarily obese, if they gain weight, we're seeing them put the weight on right in the stomach area. So there's some other things that compound it, but in particular, it's dangerous for me.
It sounds like we should have spent determined to spend the entire afternoon talking about that. That's pretty serious stuff right there.
Yeah, that's a big subject. Big subject.
Wow. Yeah, indeed. Rather frightening. And let me just follow up quickly before I bring in Pastor Adams on this one, because we are talking about the belly fat issue here, and you're saying that this can lead to things like sleep apnea, like just reducing your life expectancy.
Yes.
So what do we do when I begin to realize that my abdominal area is getting a little heavy? What do I do?
Is that for Dr. Adams?
No, that's for you.
Oh, for me. Oh.
You are the expert in this area.
Yeah, I think that what I like to think about is the fact that we need to start backing up to where we think of our overall health as a part of a more holistic approach that allow us to get up every day understanding we have to have the right balance between what we eat, what exercise that we do, and even hobbies and things that we like to enjoy. So for most men, they do it for an event. There's some event and they work towards the event. The best way to approach your health as it relates to weight is to have an holistic approach that you eat well, mainly a plant-based diet, and you have a set number of activity that you do daily with minimums that are measurable. And these days, everybody has an Apple Watch. In fact, you don't need a watch if you have a regular phone that has a little app with a heart that tells you the same basic information, the number of steps you're making. So I would like men to take an approach that says every day there's activity that you will do that's measurable. And wherever you start, that's not a problem. All you need to do is strive to do more and more every day. I don't set targets with people asking to do 10,000 steps a day while they're only doing 100. It's important to know where you are and just gradually make it a lifestyle. You want it to be a lifestyle than an event.
Very, very useful information indeed. Pastor Adams, let me bring you in here. I'm aware that as a pastor and family life educator, that men are also, as we discuss this issue of men's health, that the challenge with a lot of men is not just their physical health, but also their emotional health, the mental challenges that so important these days. A lot of people are talking about mental health these days. What are some of the more common mental health challenges? Well, before I ask you that, before I get into specifics, there is this false assumption that emotional mental health challenges are primarily a female issue. Can you react to that assumption? I did say it's a false assumption. So can you react to that, Pastor Adams?
Okay. So by just looking at the assumption alone and the question, you have just opened a whole can of worms here, because this is a conversation we don't really have. And I believe that there needs to be a continuous global conversation as to how society treat with the emotional and mental health being of men. So we need to debunk some myths and those false assumptions that emotional and mental health challenges is just a female thing. In fact, mental health challenges do not discriminate based on gender. Men like women can experience a wide range of mental health issues. But you see, the issue now is that social expectations and stereotypes may cause men to hide their struggles, because I'm saying that behind the hard facts that we have in this, as we do the research, it relates to men's emotional well-being, emotional and mental health, So the facts are telling, they're hard facts, but they are sad facts. Just to say that there was a study just done the other day, and the samples was about 1,000 men, and the results were alarming. So when we look at it, the biggest cause of mental health issues in men's lives are what? Number one, their work, men's work, their health, finances, and as Dr. Carryl rightly said, men's health. And the research that he quoted, that men sometimes do not say truthfully to their healthcare provider what the issues really are. But the sad fact is that 77% of the men have suffered symptoms of common mental health conditions such as anxiety, stress, and depression. 4 in 10 never spoke to anyone about their mental health. 29% of those say they were too embarrassed to speak about it. And while 20% say that there's a negative stigma on the issue. And so why is this happening? I want to say here and now why this is happening. There is a toxic socialization that leads to a sort of toxic masculinity that is really causing men not to want to speak and to seek the help that they would need if and when they find these situations arising. Compare that to women. Women belong to societies most of the times, and women naturally speak. Even before something is wrong with them, they naturally speak, right? Women speak about 22,000 words per day as opposed to men who talk about 11,000 words per day. And women have their societies, their group. Women talk to one another. They talk together. You know, a woman may accompany a friend to a healthcare practitioner, may help accompany a friend to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Not the same, because we men were socialized to be stoics. We're not going to show that we have hurt feelings and emotions, because somehow that is going to have us appear as though we are what? Soft. And all of the terms, all of these negative terms that are used basically in male socialization. So we're supposed to be tough. We're supposed to be a big man, don't cry, man up yourself. You know, even when we're dealing with intervention in intimate partner violence and so, even law enforcement can give these either covert, you know, or obvious messages to men. Go home and man up yourself. What do you mean by that? You know, shake it off, suck it up, you know, don't be a sissy, you know, toughen up. So this kind of a narrative, this kind of a conversation, this kind of a toxic socialization that has led to this toxic masculinity. And as we continue this conversation, we're going to contrast this toxic masculinity versus what is healthy masculinity. And so we have come to a point where we need to have a global and continuous. I think some men are coming around to see the light and are seeking to talk about their issues and to seek help, but that's not in the percentage that we want to see. We still think that if the conversation is continuous, then I guess more men will get the message and see that this is not a feminine thing. This is not a woman's thing. Men were not made devoid of emotions, right? We were socialized to suck it up, not to talk, because if you talk, don't talk too much. You know, boys don't talk so much. But when men cannot talk, they act out in their behaviors. So if men cannot talk it out, they act it out, as we're seeing. And I would want, as we go ahead in this program, particularly to reference the region in which we live, because, you know, even though you talk the global statistics, I like to talk to the Caribbean region where we live and what the issues are. I think you might be muted, Dr. Greene. You might be muted.
Okay, yes, indeed I was. I was saying it seems to me as though I underestimated the depth of the topic. It now looks like we need 2 sessions or even 3. You know, already I'm seeing that, because, you know, so many important issues to address there. And when Dr. Carryl started, you know, the whole concept of the attitude of men towards health, I think that is where you started as well, Pastor Adams. You know, this whole concept that, well, I'm a man, I don't need to worry about going to a doctor, I don't need to worry about crying and that kind of thing, because I'm a man, I'm supposed to be able to deal with that myself. And that is a real challenge. So today's Father's Day, and what I hear you 2 gentlemen saying is that it would be a perfect Father's Day gift for our men listening to say, hey, listen, let me get real with myself and give attention to my health. I mean, that could save their life, not so?
Sure, definitely. And, you know, yeah, we need to shift away, and particularly in the Caribbean region. I said I'm a Caribbean man. And is it a symptom of a deeper problem? The fact that United Nations report have said that Latin America and the Caribbean is the most violent region on earth when they work out per capita, that intimate partner violence and abuse is highest in this region. And as I was looking at my research and preparing for this program, I said, well, could this be just the symptom of this deeper problem that we're addressing here this afternoon? You know, because if men were not nurtured, and we just don't get it, as we say, it is better to nurture the child right, to train the child right, than to fix a broken adult. And so what is actually happening, that these masculine ideals start at a very young age and define masculinity as related to toughness and self-sufficiency and lack of emotional sensitivity. So it begins still.
Adams, I want to interrupt you a little bit there, because I want to pick up on a statement you just made there. And I'm going to ask Dr. Carryl to share how this plays out practically. Pastor Adams said it's better now I'm forgetting the thing. It's better to deal with somebody in childhood than to fix a broken adult. I don't.
Yes.
Can you repeat that statement, Pastor Adams?
Yes. It is better to train a child in the right way than to fix a broken adult.
Okay, so that's the point. And I want to ask Dr. Carryl this question. Now, you earlier indicated that your expertise is to deal with obesity and correcting issues relating to overweight and that kind of thing. I believe the term is bariatric surgery. Correct me if I'm wrong. You know, I'm
That's correct. That's correct.
So if I do not give attention to controlling my health, and I get to the point where it becomes so excessive that I have to take surgery, what is involved and what kind of expense am I talking about? I'm going back to that statement about training the person rather than fixing the brokenness.
I think that there are times when you take someone who has gotten to a place, and let us use some terms that would allow us to have some uniformity with what we are discussing. There is an understanding about weight, but it must be seen in the context of the person's height. The weight-height relationship is called the body mass index, which is a relationship between the number of kilograms you weigh over your height. Once your BMI get to a certain number, let's say in this case 40 and above, where normal is in the 20s. If you go through the 30s and now you're in the 40s, that is considered real significant obesity. The first line of trying to fix the problem would never be surgery. There are 5 general methods that are used to help people lose weight. And so those other methods must be used: diet, exercise, and Dr. Adams might appreciate this. There are some people who they're eating because of underlying mental health challenges, both men and women. And so a part of the remedy has to be, what are some of the stresses and ACEs and trauma that might be causing somebody to be eating? And as you know, there's this whole concept of comfort food. You eat food that actually make you feel good. They release endorphins in the brain, just like crack cocaine, you know, and they make you feel good and you keep eating. So there's a portion that has to do with therapy, and even some people use hypnosis to get to the bottom of it. Nowadays, we know that there's pharmaceuticals, but these pharmaceuticals have been around for a long time in different forms. Most of us grew up hearing about fat-burning pills. Nowadays, people are talking about Ozempic, but it's the same idea. You could use some pharmacology to get the weight under control. And if all of those fail, that's not necessarily all of them, but if you have tried these methods and they fail, that's when surgery becomes an option. We don't do surgery just because somebody is requesting surgery just because someone else had the surgery and they like how they turn out. But surgery is reserved for people who tried medical and psychological, pharmacological, all other methods and fail, have a BMI over 40 or 35 with some comorbidity. That's when we will introduce the surgical option.
So let me ask you, Doc, is surgery popular? If there's so many other things that one tries before they get to surgery, then I'd want to think that you surgeons don't have any work to do, because a lot of people would deal with the problem before it gets to the point of surgery. But am I correct?
That's a fact. You're absolutely right. Here was the statistic, very compelling. Only 15% of the people who could get surgery pick surgery. That means 85% are looking for some other option. They prefer to try, and not because in reality, Dr. Greene, it's surgery, you know? So most people don't just come standing up saying, give me surgery. However, when you add diet, exercise, hypnosis, and pills over a long-term period, and long-term means 3 to 5 years, the success, and we know this is not stuff we have to debate. You have seen people go to these dieting programs and they lose 300 pounds, but they gain back 310. It's a known fact. It's a challenge they have. So we are looking at these 4 options, and the best you see with them long-term is 20% success.
Wow.
Surgery is not perfect, but surgery done successfully is as high as 85% successful. And the 15% that you have recidivism and challenges, there are ways to deal with that group. But in general, you have about 85% success with surgery, but only 15% of the public choose surgery. And I'll say this because my practice in bariatric surgery has mainly been in the US. And when you have hundreds of millions of people in your population, you as an individual surgeon could be doing 300 to 400 of these cases yourself. So if you're in a small island with a population of 60,000, it might not seem like a lot of people. But in the Caribbean, obesity is a significant problem right now. It was not this way 25 years ago. I remember in 1991, we had a health seminar in the Caribbean, and we had to leave off the obesity segment of the program because we didn't think it applied. There was nobody that looked as though they had a BMI over 30. And if you did it on a map with color, you could see how the Caribbean has transformed itself over 25 years, where the number of people with BMIs now even in the 60s and 70s compared to just 25 years.
That is, wow. That's as much as I can say. Wow. You know, it's because, you know, I hear governments talking about the obesity problem, and sometimes, you know, when I talk about governments, because they have the power to regulate, and I'm wondering why there is not more regulation taking place when we watch our population changing so drastically, and nothing is being done about it. It's really alarming. Seriously.
Now I know that I would beg if you could give me 2 minutes.
Sure.
One of the challenges that I think we don't sometimes appreciate, just the same way the person who is selling cars, his motivation is to sell as many cars as he could. The people who sell houses, their motivation is to sell as many houses as they could. Well, Dr. Greene, the people who are selling food, their motivation is to sell as much food as they could, and they have no concern if you get overweight, diabetes, it's not their problem. And we are dealing with an industry that is very sophisticated with scientific minds who have sat down over the last 30 years and realized that if they figure out the right combination of fat, sugar, and salt that increases what is called palatability in food, people are now addicted to food. And it's not the, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the government can make certain, you know, some regulations, but we're up against a challenge that I don't think people appreciate. You're in an industry, the food industry, whose job is to sell food to make as much of a profit, to have where there's a Christmas bonus and the shareholders.
I think you muted there a little bit, not sure why, but so the last point you made may have been missed. So if you could just say that
Or
again.
the last point I made, Pastor, is that the people who sell food, their agenda is to make a big profit so that they could turn some dividends to the shareholders. And that's what they do. So their agenda is to sell food, and the public is now addicted to food in a way that we've never seen before, because they're PhDs who are in the food industry, who study carbohydrates, who study fats, and they're studying sugars and all of these things in a way, and salt, that is increasing food to the point where they're now addicting. And so I'm not saying that we don't have, the government can't help. My focus is educating people about the challenges that they're up against.
Now, Pastor Adams's camera is creating a little challenge, so I'm going to give him a minute or two to sort that out. I'm sure that there's a lot for us to talk about until he gets that straightened out. So let me ask you, earlier when we were talking about the various aspects of health, and you know, you spotlighted that the attitude towards health for men is a major concern. I kind of want to go back there a little bit, because if I don't give attention to my health, if I don't check when I'm supposed to get my medical checks, especially as I get older, you know, and a lot of times I think people think that because, well, I'm young, you may have a young man, 25 years of age, he feels that he's in the prime of his life, he doesn't feel any aches and pains, and so go to a doctor that may make him feel like something is wrong with him, and he ignores that. And that, I think Pastor Adams was sharing earlier, that the socialization there to make us believe that we can walk through life without these things. What am I likely to miss when I develop that attitude and I don't go to the doctor at all, unless or until I begin to feel some kind of pain? How dangerous is that?
That's a dangerous place to be, because every condition that's diagnosed early has a better chance of complete cure and survival than one that's done late. So let me use this as an example. There's no one in the room, including a husband, who would not encourage his wife to get an annual mammogram. Am I right?
I believe
most men would, and they would encourage them. They'll drive them to the event. They will go with their wives if the wife is pregnant to get their, you know, whatever those checks are, and they want to see the baby in the sonogram. And even when you get to the delivery, the wife is going to have exams like weekly on the visits, and it's pelvic examinations. These are private examinations, and the husband will be willing to come and be in the room. And I think where I see the difference is men sometimes do not equate some of those things to benefit them. So I would prefer that I find my PSA when it just goes up, because last year it was normal, and now it went from 2 to 2.5, then we could do some investigation. Every condition is best approached by early detection. And here what I will share with our men. Men have some challenges. Dr. Adams kind of hinted to some of them in the behavioral health space, but it's the same with our physical health. We prefer not to know, Dr. Greene. You know, it's like, I don't want to know anything. And so that's a dangerous thing. So that's number one. Number two, when the man comes to the doctor because of the socialization, we want to be in control. We still feel that when we come in the room, we are now losing some form of control. And so it's better I avoid the space. And so at the end of the program, there's some suggestions we could make in terms of how to get men to change their attitude. I think we could get to that later. But most important for me is every condition, if it's found in the colon, in the prostate, in the lung, wherever it's found early, there's a chance that we could have complete cure and complete survival.
Okay, encouraging. Pastor Adams, I'm not sure if you are back up.
Yeah, you could just put on back my camera. Let me see.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, I think we're there now. Yes. All right. So Dr. Carroll and I were talking while you were making that adjustment, Pastor Adams, and I think it's interesting, almost scary, in fact. Some of the things we're discovering about delaying going to the doctor can cause. Now, I want to get back to you, Pastor Adams, because I meant to ask you earlier about some specifics with respect to emotional health. What are some of the more common mental health challenges that men face today? I know, you spoke about the dealing with the false assumption that mental health doesn't affect men, etc. But what are some of the more specific mental health challenges that men face today?
Yes, and there I can stay from the number one of them: depression, anxiety disorders, conduct disorder, and there are many conduct disorders. I should qualify that. There's bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder because of men's risky behavior. Yes, to be masculine and don't fear anything, then schizophrenia, obsessive compulsive disorders. All of these are, in fact, they are both mood and personality disorders that presents themselves as mental health issues in men. And just to talk about depression alone, depression that leads to the point where they've not just suicidality or suicide ideation, but even though women also suffer quite a lot in this area and are depressed, they are more likely to get treatment. And as Dr. Carroll is rightly saying, men are going to avoid the clinic. They're going to try to self-medicate. They're going to do a number of things just to avoid that space because, again, the masculinity, the toxic masculinity, I have to be in charge and control. I'm going to subject myself to any counselor or any medical practitioner, to have his or her way with me. You see, so let's, for example, 90% of the suicidal cases are males. When it comes to mental disorders, boys and men outnumber girls. In fact, they're 1 in 10 men would experience depression, anxiety, but less than half would receive treatment. And so when men comes to that end of the rope, hopelessness, whatever they choose is most lethal. And that is why we have the deaths, the statistics at that point, 90% of suicide rate in men. So you have all these disorders, and Dr. Carroll said something that is key, because we are not just talking about the mortality rate in men because of these issues, but we are also talking about some other thing, the comorbid situation that developed. There's comorbidity because in the counseling practicing clinical setting, when we deal with a patient, when we deal with a client rather, you have to use a bidirectional approach, because if one thing presents itself, you want to know what else goes along there. So if somebody shows up with the signs, the clinical symptom of depression, you want to know what else is going along with it. And so that's the situation. So for example, if a man could be diagnosed with depression to the point where he is suicidal ideation has taken over, but they might be linked to various other life distressing events or situations, right? For example, relationship separation. These are some life distressing events for men, financial problems. And you said, because after COVID, the research shows us what has happened with men's mental health after a disaster, like we had the hurricane pass through our region here. Was it 2016? We had Irma and the other one, and there were some issues. I understand that some men got real ill because of their investment. They lost the investment. People even died. You see, so you have this kind of a situation, bereavement, recent or pending unemployment, family conflict, pending legal matters, right?
Right. I
So
wanted
all
to
of this.
follow up a little bit on the relationship. And maybe Dr. Carroll could jump in here. The relationship between the mental health and the physical health. Because we from time to time we say that there's a relationship, one affects the other. And I'm going to use an example here. If I am dealing with a marital threat, let's say my wife tells me, maybe I'm not earning sufficient to take care of the needs at home, the financial needs at home. And if my wife says, if you don't get a proper job, I'm leaving you. And I begin to worry and stress about that. Already I'm not getting work, and now my wife is going to walk out on me. How can that lead to physical health issues? Dr. Carroll.
I think it might be a part of a philosophy that I have, because I find it very difficult, Dr. Adams, to really bifurcate the human being the way we do. You could start with one area in your life that has nothing to do with your physical.
Right.
And you worry about it so much that it affects you physically.
Yes.
Or you could start with something that is purely physical, in particular as you get older, and you can do some of the play cricket and do the things you used to do. Then it leads to this a mental part now that is. So I find it's an oversimplification to try to separate it, and I understand the reason, don't get me wrong. But I find the two are intricately connected.
Definitely.
Look, we had a health fair with some police officers, and most of them are men. We did a survey. 95% or more had problems with sleep. Think about it. These guys are cops who are dealing in a very dangerous space. And yes, the manifestation of the stress is that they now it's physical. They don't have enough sleep. Right. They can't sleep. So I think that it's really, I see it as a continuum. We could put our hands on some of these things easily, but many things that are affecting us physically will eventually, in time, affect us emotionally and psychologically. Yes. And the things that are affecting you that start outside, they never stay in that box. It's nice and convenient, but ultimately it manifests itself in every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, and that is so very curious, because about a man is not a dichotomy, if you want to say that. We are a multi-dimensional unity. When one side of us is affected, the other side is affected, and so many of the diseases originates there in the mind. Just how we think and how it affects us, because on the spectrum of the research, as you see it, you begin to run a level of stress because of the same example that Dr. Greene is a man's wife threatens to leave to walk out on him. Then his stress level begins to go up. And how does he deal with that stress? Does he go off binge drinking? Does he turn to substance? All of these things, because what is driving the behavior? How do we deal with the stress? How do we treat with it? So now this is not the good stress that we talk about. This is not you stress now, but now this is a distressing situation. And the coping mechanism, the false coping mechanism leads to ill health and disease. So it's a vicious cycle as we see it, right? One affects the others, right? One affects the other. And it is a real thing. In matter of fact, marital separation, even the death of a spouse, or some a man's mental health, we grieve over things. You grieve over the medical result. Is there going to be amputation, as Dr. Carryl just said? I can't get to do the things like I used to do. There is anticipated grief, and then grief becomes complicated, and that's another mental health situation that has built up right there, because we grieve. We don't only grieve when somebody dies and we know we're going to put them in wherever the burial place is. We grieve over these life issues, separation.
So gentlemen, hear this, because believe it or not, we have 5 more minutes.
Oh, goodness, our time is finished. Our time is finished. But let me, I was just saying that grief in itself alone, if it is not dealt with, can cause ill health. And you can grieve over relationship loss, just so you grieve the same stages, the 4 stages you go through. Well, all the clinicians will say 5, and now they've reduced it. But you can go through the same, and grief can become pathological.
Certainly. And here's what I want to say, because what we want to talk is solutions.
Yes.
We want men to understand, and women too, but our focus is men's health today. But we want men to be able to understand that they need to take responsibility for their health. Don't delay, don't procrastinate, because that could become rather very dangerous. And in my experience, I remember one time I came across a gentleman. I was talking to him, a member of my congregation, and he shared some symptoms that suggested to me that he either had prostate cancer or he had an enlarged prostate, just from hearing his pattern. And I said to him, you need to go to the doctor. And he said, no, man, I'm going to take care of this myself. I'm going to drink some bush. Even when it was very apparent that he needed to take urgent action, he was still trying to avoid going to the doctor. Yeah. So let's spend the last 2 minutes, and because I want to save 2 minutes, I have a question I want to ask Dr. Carryl afterwards. But the last 2 minutes here, talk to the men. What do we want to say to them emotionally, physically? How must they react? What can they do to make a difference for their future?
I think that's to allow me to start quickly, because I feel very strongly about this, since I see many of the consequences of men delaying care, and instead of just having a toenail that's bad, they'll come in with their entire foot that's bad, and it was like this for the last month, but it didn't come in. I am very concerned, as I said in the beginning, about the attitude. So what I'm asking, we are encouraging primary care doctors, when women are having their exams, try to couple their husbands with the men. If you have a spouse, try to coordinate your healthcare visits with your wife's visits. I think that's a very simple strategy. Secondly, talk about it. Like how when you go to the barbershop, I don't know if you guys still go to the barbershop. Guys talk a whole lot in the barbershop. There's a level of discourse that I think we just have to start bringing it out to the public. I share with people at the barbershop, when post-COVID, I used to be involved with a program called, where we are talking about when there's a comfort program, when somebody is dying because they heard I'm an Adventist and they heard I was a pastor. When the person has half an hour to go, I must pray for them and read the Bible. Well, that came up with a lot of stress on me when I was done. And it resulted in me openly saying, you know what, I have to go for counseling. And guys, doc, I just think there's a discourse that we need to have, where men should know we could just free to talk like we do in the barbershop, try to tie into some of our children, our wives' visit, to make it where it's now more, they're part of that healthcare conversation. And I think it's not going to change immediately, but we will see a gradual trend towards men being more involved with health. both mental and physical and psychological.
Wonderful. Pastor Adams, 1 minute.
Yeah, we're going to see, in addition to what Dr. Carroll said, I think there's an urgent need for us men to build social connection, choose an accountability partner. I have accountability partners, 3 men who I can talk to, you know, in a personal way. You have an older man, you have somebody, your peer, and you have a younger person. So then enjoy some of the things, the hobbies, and so get regular exercise. I think Dr. Carroll mentioned that earlier. Take care of your nutrition, nourish your body, you know, and very critically consider counseling, because your accountability partner can help you to get to the counseling room, and the interventions are always timely, not just in the physical sense that Dr. Carroll is a medical practitioner, but the same thing, mental health issues. If you're sick and your mind is sick, you also need to get help and treatment, and you have to get it. The intervention has to be timely.
Definitely, certainly. Now, Dr. Carroll, I wanted to ask you this final question.
Yes.
You this is your community hospital in Trinidad.
Yes.
Many of our listeners perhaps have never heard about community hospital. We have listeners from around the world, but you know, particularly in the Caribbean. So I wanted to give you a minute and a half just to talk about some of the things that you offer there at community.
I think I appreciate the opportunity to let people know that Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventists, it's one of the 2 acute care hospitals in the Caribbean Union. It was opened originally in 1948. So that means this year, Dr. Greene, it's 76 years old that the hospital has been around. It is the first private hospital in Trinidad. And as of this morning, today, we have an extensive array of services that we offer. We have all the advanced diagnostic radiology services in the hospital. We have a regular X-ray, sonogram, mammogram, CAT scans, MRI. We have all of those services that we offer. We also offer cardiology, echo and stress tests, and we have all the levels of surgery and neurosurgery. And I mean, it's really a place now that is becoming one of the premier hospitals in Trinidad, as we're recruiting the right set of people, bringing back people from the diaspora who are still practicing in the US, but willing to come to Trinidad and, you know, make sure that they find a way to give back while we're still productive. And finally, Community Hospital is the most affordable private hospital in Trinidad and Tobago. So here we are being able to make our motto, high quality care that's affordable. And we feel as a faith-based organization, we wouldn't change that model. We'll continue to build and grow. We have a new eye service. We have, as I said, MRI, colonoscopies. We have executive medicals. People are coming from other islands now for knee replacement surgery and high special surgery. So we want to be the hub for the Seventh-day Adventist population. And finally, we were visited by the medical director for the IAD, Dr. Genius. He was so overwhelmed with what he saw at community. He's on the board, but he has never visited. And now he realized that community has the opportunity to help transform healthcare as we create what is called a Caribbean Union health system. That's the goal in the near future. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. We need to have you back just to talk about, you know, general health, and there are some questions we didn't get answered, but we will dialogue on those things. It was a pleasure having you 2 gentlemen as we
Same here, Doc. Same here.
Men's health.
And Dr. Adams, good being on with you, buddy.
What's a pleasure. It's a pleasure talking to you together with Dr. Carroll. It's good we could share.
To our viewers, next week we did have a conversation with 3 of our retired presidents earlier in the month, and we did promise that they are going to come back. So next week they will finish that conversation. We were discussing some issues that came out of our conversations with retired presidents, and we did say that we only got halfway in the discussion. So next Saturday afternoon we're going to be continuing that discussion, wrapping up that discussion with those persons. But we will be back with lots of other issues, and so remember, every Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m., the place to be is right here where you're watching or listening from. Let's Talk. God bless you. Until next time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr.